In 1956, a researcher by the name of Marcel Geber, on a grant from the United Nations Children's Fund, traveled to Africa to study the effect of malnutrition on children's intelligence. She made a momentous discovery. She found among the Uganda babies the most brilliant and precocious children that had ever been studied anywhere. So it was unbelievable to her that she went to find malnutrition and the effects of that on children, and she found these babies that were unbelievable. In the book by Joseph Chilton Pearce that I quoted last week called The Magical Child, there's a couple of pieces on this, and I just want to give you an idea. They compared these babies to the famous studies in America of Arnold Gazelle, who had given what is normal for American children. They found that these children could sit up straight, supported only by their forearms in 48 hours, with perfect head balance and eye focus, marvelous intelligence shining in the face, and 6 to 10 weeks, all 300 of the children in the study crawled skillfully, could sit up by themselves, and would sit spellbound before a mirror looking at their own image for long periods. It goes on and on to say that these children walked 6 months to a year ahead of any other known children, and went on to describe in this study some of the reasons they believed for this phenomenal precociousness. And the most fundamental reason they came to was what they considered to be the bonding that takes place between these mothers and these babies. That from the moment they are born, they are carried by their mothers, they nurse at their mother's breast, they cry almost not at all, they sleep surprisingly little as compared to other babies. They're in conscious movement because the momentum of the mother is carrying them all the time. And up to 4 years old, they just make phenomenal strides in growth. Now at 4, Uganda babies begin to regress because of the taboo systems, because the mothers leave their children and put them in other homes. But this study was one of the most phenomenal ones, teaching us something about the nature of bonding, and what I come to in this program, which we have called Who Do You Trust? The most important developmental task for a healthy personality is a sense of trust that is greater than the sense of mistrust. And researcher Eric Erikson, who I'm using as my resource person in this series, says that in the first 15 months of life, this ego strength is developed, that there has to be a greater sense of trust in a child than mistrust, and that coming out of that is what he calls the ego strength. Because remember, we're looking in this series at what is a healthy personality. What constitutes health? A strong ego, a person who has inherent strength. And the first fundamental condition of that is a sense of trust, a greater sense of trust than mistrust. Now, one of the things I want to point out is that we'll always be looking at these polarities. Remember last week I talked about crises, these 8 developmental crises. And I suggested that it's important for us to think about that because life is involved in crises, these times of increased vulnerability and heightened potential. Out of this crisis of trust versus mistrust comes a sense of hope. And that's the first ego strength that Erikson says. You cannot be a strong personality without a sense of hope. Now, it doesn't mean that these kids consciously at the end of 15 months say, gee, mama, now I got a sense of hope. It's much more an unconscious kind of thing. It's that the facts are friendly. They've been able to trust the environment that they're in. Mama has been there, or the mothering person. Not so much necessarily in what she said, because the child can't understand that, although the child's body is responding to those words, as we talked about last week, but more in the way the mother touches the child, that the mother is there. that there's a predictable response when you're hungry. Someone is there. The world is friendly. The world is going to take care of me. My needs can be met. My needs can be met. That's the sense that the child gets. Now that sense comes more than any other way through touching. And one of the most tragic things in modern life, in my opinion, is how people get out of touch. I want you to do a simple experiment for me. Just turn to your partner and one of you be it. One of you be the massagee and one of you be the massager. And those of you at home watching this, if you're sitting with someone, if you just take their arm and one of you, the one getting massaged, just close your eyes and allow this person, it's better if you're skin on skin, just start massaging that person's arm and, you know, kind of do it in your own style. Start out slow and give them a few swoops and, you know, work up and down and just do it. And the one of you that are getting massaged, just kind of sit there and close your eyes and experience it. Now, especially pay attention to your consciousness if you're with a woman with a woman, or a man with a man, touching each other, and see what that feels like. And just do that for a couple of seconds. Because you see, what I started this program with, this notion of the Ugandhi babies, this constant contact between the mother and the child, being constantly caressed and touched and carried as the matrix of human life, as the important beginning of human life that establishes this sense of contact. There's another man that has done work on bonding named Marcel Klaus at Case Western University, Dr. Marcel Klaus. Klaus claims that if a child is properly bonded, they will rarely cry. That crying is not something natural. That crying is something we do when we're hurting. And while the human race has believed that children cry and it's normal and we leave them in the room crying, and by the way, I don't know whether this is a conclusive study, whether it's absolutely right, but it's an interesting thought that when these children are bonded, and these Ugandhi babies cry very little. Now, those of you massaging, bring it to a conclusion. I mean, give them your best shot and then sort of fade out. Those of you at home, I hope you're massaging too. This is the massage hour. If you tuned in just now. Now, just stop for a minute, those of you who got massaged, and just drop your two arms and try to contrast the feeling in one arm and the other. And somebody just tell me how you describe that. One's warm and one's cold. One's alive, one's more alive, one's more soothed, one's relaxed. You see, we describe people who are in trouble emotionally as being out of touch. Out of touch. It touched me, it moved me, I'm involved in life. And it's terribly important to understand that this first developmental ego strength, trust versus mistrust, comes through touch more than any other way. Through the contact between the baby, us as babies. And those of you who are listening to this series is not about child rearing. I mean, if some of these ideas are helpful to you, fine. It's more about every one of us and where we've come from. I want you to be like anthropologists going back to discover the beginnings, or historians going back and looking at the journey that we've all made to be where we are now, where we've come from, where we are now, and where we're going. And realize that all of us had to develop this sense of trust. And that without this sense of trust, imagine it, just think of it for a second. What would happen to a child who had no sense of trust? You can't trust what's out there. And you see, when you can't trust what's out there, there's a sense of how can you trust yourself, because you don't know. You've never interacted in this interliving. So there is strong evidence that children who are damaged at this period of life have a very difficult time learning. How would you go out in the next period of life and explore the world if you didn't trust it? And think in your own lives right now, who do you trust? You know, when we come to the adult stages, to middle age, I think one of the things that I have dealt with in my own life is feeling a loss of trust. Seeing people kind of be for themselves and feeling betrayed at times and kind of really believing that most people are out for themselves and having some experiences of that. And sort of as you begin to experience that the heroes you once had have died or passed away, then who do you trust? And once you really know about human finitude, do you trust the human beings who told you about God and all of those things? See, the middle-age crazies is a crisis of trust. We're going to get to that. What I want you to see is that as we go through these stages, it's not like you finish with one and say goodbye to it and jettison it and go on to the next. Every stage goes into the next stage. And the whole idea of epigenesis, of one stage developing on another stage, is that there's a time of ripeness. See, the word maturity, maturo, means ripening. When you are mature, you've ripened. There is a ripening taking place in life. There is an appointed time, a time of readiness, a time of ripening. Now, the idea in this epigenetic kind of 8 stages of man-woman is that if you don't meet the developmental task in the proper time, then you go on to the next stage wounded. Doesn't mean you can't fix it. And that's something I said last week. Be careful about that. They'll say, oh my God, I missed stage 2 and I'm doomed. Or my kid missed stage 1 and, he's going down the pike. The earlier on a child misses the things that need to develop, the harder it's going to be. The farther back you go, a great mistake in the beginning is, a small mistake in the beginning is a great mistake in the end. It is important to understand that. Try something. Put your arms together in just the normal way. Now, fold your arms the other way. You see the experience of, that's wrong. You see, because the first way you learn to do it is the way that feels right. And that's the way you get habituated in, and that's what feels the most powerful to you. And that's why it's so hard to change, because it doesn't feel right. Now, as we go through these developmental crises, one of the hardest parts of this idea of developmental stages is that you have to change. You have to say goodbye to the previous stage. Not jettison it, but go on from the familiar to the unfamiliar. Carl Jung once said, all neurosis is the avoidance of legitimate suffering. And I love that. I love it because it's so true to my own life. My own neuroses are the ways that I avoid or want to avoid legitimate suffering. In my own drinking days, many of you know I was an alcoholic for 17 years. I'm 16 years sober. But in my drinking days, I used alcohol to avoid legitimate suffering. I could put something in my mouth and go shazam! And all the pain and all the tension and all the discomfort and all the pimples and all the scare of girls and everything faded away. The quivering lip went away, and I didn't have to deal with legitimate suffering. So as we go through these stages, part of the issue is always going to be, if you want to grow, you've got to be able to say goodbye. And that's what's so hard about growing. That's why nobody wants to change. Or we want to change, but we don't want to pay the price of changing. Now, the first developmental stage, then, is this sense of trust. The first 15 months of life, this is an incorporative stage. The child is taking the world in through the mouth. And we know that growth disorder here is often the basis of later disorders in personalities, weak personalities like addictive personalities, where you deal with the world by taking it in through your mouth, or talking neuroses. Some people think I still have one, but where you sort of control the world by talking, and some people do that. They talk a good game, but they don't do anything. Richard Bandler said, pay attention to what people do, not what they say they do. If you want to know about a person, if you want to know about yourself, look at what you do, not what you say you do. What you really do is more important. First 15 months of life, basic trust. Now, second 15 months of life, you began 15 months to 2 years. We call it the terrible twos. Freud called this the anal stage. This is the stage of development where little Farquhar walks out now trusting the world with his little muscles starting to develop, and he wants to test everything. You can trust this world, so let's try it out. Let's hold on to things, pick up glasses and drop them. Holding on, letting go. That's what you do with muscles. And one of the issues in this period is the imbalance between the budding energy in muscles and the lack of development of logical reasoning. You can't reason with 2-year-olds. They get enraged all the time. But they want to do it their own way. So autonomy versus shame and doubt is the polarity of this period. Now I want to show you something. I want to do something crazy with you. I want you to turn to your partner, and just for a few minutes, not a few minutes, for 30 seconds, I want you to talk to your partner as if you were a unique robot. Like, and everybody can do it just your own way. Have your own style of doing it. I mean, you know, make your own sound. Don't copy mine. Then when I say switch, I want you to go crazy. I want you to be an idiot. Ah! Something like that. So try this. Turn to your partner, and just for a couple of minutes here, be robots talking to each other. And you can be threesomes if you want to. Good. Looking good. All right, switch. Switch back. Switch back. Now switch again. All right, stop. Oh, that was great. All right. Now, just for a minute, I hope some of you at home are doing this too. I hope your neighbors aren't seeing you. But now, what I'd like you to do is just reflect on that for a second. Just close your eyes for a second and think about when you were being the robot, how that felt. And I know this feels a little bit awkward and silly because it's a game. It's a structured game. But then think about when you let go and went crazy, how that felt. And then think about which one of those felt the best to you. Did you feel better being a robot in control? Or when you let go? Okay? And what's at issue there is the issue of control and letting go. Letting go of control. See, when people drink and take pills, they let go of control. I believe that the stress and the uptight and the tension of our culture is one of the reasons so much drugs are used, in order to help people to let go. Stress is threatening. Something threatening, you become uptight. Fight, flight. So there's a lot of people put on funny hats when they drink and dance and act silly, because basically we may not know how to let go. And we may not know, many people do not know how to let go without chemicals. In this second period of life, the dynamic is holding on to your muscles, letting go. Glasses, the sphincter muscle, going to the potty. Little kids got to learn to hold on, let go. It's very confusing because sometimes he gets rewarded for holding on. Sometimes he gets punished for holding on. Sometimes he gets rewarded for letting go. Sometimes he gets punished for letting go, like in Foley's. And it's very confusing, but these modalities, you see, these two modalities, retentive, eliminative, that's what the little kids, that's what all our bodies were doing in this period. And a great deal depended on the big giants that were relating to us. Because these big giants were standing there going, go on, hurry up, or don't do that in here, or... And so there was a struggle, and there was the emergence of what Erikson calls willpower. And every little kid is beginning to test the limits here. And if you have a parent that's too coercive, too authoritarian, too punishing, shaming you, you begin to doubt yourself, and you begin to develop a precocious conscience. And this leads into what we're going to talk about next week, guilty, not guilty, that you begin to feel guilty all the time. And you see, a healthy personality, a healthy ego is characterized by a sense of trust and autonomy and a proportionate knowing how to hold on, love, be faithful, hold on to values, and let go. Live and let live. There is an appointed time for all things. Hey, it's time to recreate and have fun. And knowing how to do those two things. See, some people don't know how. One of the issues of life is this rigidity versus flexibility, or spontaneity, to be able to live and then choose when it's appropriate to delay gratification. I have to learn how to do that. And it's a balance. Willpower is the ability to know that I can trust myself. And you see, the great dangers in this period are the foundation for compulsive and impulsive personalities, where the will goes riot. It's the will running riot. I must hold on, and I must count everything, and I must label every bench, lectern, a compulsive personality. I must hoard, or let go of everything. Just live and let live. And you see, again, the relational styles, the relation between mother, daddy, child. And in every relationship, there's the issue of love and power going on. How do I be firm but tolerant? Because if I'm firm and tolerant, I will teach that little person to be firm and tolerant with themselves. But if I'm over-coercive, or if I'm over-indulging, then he lets go, and he doesn't know how to manage himself or herself. So crucial kinds of things are happening in this stage of life. Not that they can't be remedied. Not that they can't be remedied. But in the normal development of a healthy personality, willpower begins to be developed here. And a little person begins to get the experience, I can trust the world. It's out there. My power to know, love, feel, and imagine, to get my needs for self-acceptance and security and structure and stimulation and self-actualization, those needs, I can do it. I have a sense of hope. Nothing this logical, much more unconscious, but a foundation that later on, when we get to the stage of identity, will be the foundation that is going to make that identity crisis a terrible trauma, if there's no foundation, or a struggle, but easier. If these stages are there, if these strengths, these inherent strengths, these ego virtues, a sense of hope, a sense of willpower, if they are there, then every one of us goes to the next stage of life strong, with a healthy ego. Healthy means strong. It has virtue, as opposed to weak. I don't know how to control myself. I'm either impulsive or compulsive. So see, this whole issue of power and love, personally, I see it as a major issue in my own life, in my own relationships, in my own marriage. I see it in all the marriages that I counsel. Issue is always between power and love. Today, sitting in my office, the woman kept saying, he doesn't want to give up the power. I'll pay the bills. He won't let me because he doesn't want to give up the power, the one-up that he has when I don't pay the bills of saying I do 3/4 of the work. And time again, if you want to know what you're getting out of a relationship, if it's bad and you stay in it, it'll be power. It'll be the feeling of I'm right and they're wrong, and that's the feeling of righteousness, and that's the feeling of being one up. Okay? And so these issues, while they go way back 15 months to 3 years, are crucial issues in the development of personality. Now, next week we're going to be talking about the years from 3 to 6 or 7. I'm going to tell you about some of the developments in terms of intelligence. What I just want you to hear tonight is the importance of touching, and we still need that, folks. I do, anyway. You know, anybody feels like hugging me after the program, it's all right with me. Touching, we need to be in touch. We're on a spaceship and we're all destined to die. Hey, let's make contact. Why are we all alienated? And why don't we talk to our neighbors? It's a terrible thing to think about it. That all we have is each other for sure, that we know of. And I'm not trying to step on anybody's religious beliefs, but touch each other, hold hands, care for, and then willpower, that I have the choice. And as I said last week at the end of the program, I'm going to say it at the end of every program. Even though I'm describing these normative phases, every one of you is unique. There's never been another you. You are unrepeatable. A bloodhound can smell you in 1,000,000 people. Your fingerprint is utterly unique and different. And so, while these are normative things, I don't want you to be limited by that. What I do is me, for that I came. That's what the poet says. We are the universe from a particular point of view. The goal of life is to find out how you are the universe. What is your destiny? To find out how you have never been before. You have never been before. No one like you has ever been before. And that's really worth going for. What I do is me, for that I came. So the risk of my life is choosing to be me. Is choosing to be me. Is choosing to trust myself and the world enough and the plan enough and to trust my power and energy enough that I can become who I am. That involves decision. That means changing. That means getting out of the familiar and going to the unfamiliar, and that is scary. Eric Erikson is telling us, and all of them are telling us, that we can change. If right now you're compulsive, over-controlled, or impulsive, under control, you can change that. Everything can be changed. Everything can be different. It's up to you to do it, and you can do it if you want to. The choice is yours.